Ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year and welcome back to another Bitcoin update. Today we need to be discussing the bullish rampage that Bitcoin is entering right now as it moves upwards very swiftly from something like 42k to the doorstep of 46k and potentially looking to move all the way upwards to 48,000 USD, as we've been discussing as a possibility for months now on this YouTube channel. But Bitcoin's done some big things to start this move. It has broken above the major Ichimoku cloud baseline resistance in the monthly chart that has suppressed the Bitcoin price for over a year and a half. This is a major move to the upside, a big step in the right direction for triggering a 2024 bull market, and very good for Bitcoin in terms of a macro structural move. But we do face the ETF decision in around 8 or 9 days here on the 10th of January, and there's actually a lot of speculation about whether that will be bullish or bearish for Bitcoin. Perhaps we will start our correction from there. We'll have to wait and see. Guys, I'll discuss my movements in the market in this video, my predictions for the future, and an explanation about what's gone on in the last few days. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the content. Guys, Bitcoin has started 2024 on an absolute rampage. You can see on the screen here on the 4-hourly chart, I'm going to draw a pink line on where 2024 started. As you can see, it happened around here, and ever since the start of 2024, after a brief little retest of 42.1k, we have been zooming to the upside. In fact, Bitcoin is up around 8% since the start of 2024. As you can see on the screen right now, we've moved upwards from 42k to the doorstep of 46k. Now, what happened at the flip of the new year that gave Bitcoin the strength to move to the upside? We're going to discuss that in this video. It is the monthly candle close, okay? But before we even get into that, why is what's happened important? Okay, on a short-term level, this is great. Bitcoin has made an excellent move, right? We've made a move on Bitcoin that has breached the local higher high, right? So we've had an upwards trend for a long period of time now. We know that Bitcoin has just been on an absolute rampage since around September. But realistically, throughout the entirety of 2023, it did very, very, very well. And traditional markets did very well as well. But we had since around the 11th of September an upwards trend with consistent higher highs, okay, as you can see, and consistent higher lows, right? All the way up in this upwards trend for about 3.5 months now. We have been consistently moving upwards with higher highs and higher lows. This is absolutely insane. I mean, it's insane because of the length of this upwards trend. You don't generally see upwards trends last for this period of time at this point in the cycle. It does occur, it has occurred in the past, but it's not, common, it's not frequent. Now, we've speculated many times about why Bitcoin has been so persistent in moving to the upside. I'm very much confident that the ETF narrative has a massive part to do with that, right? Obviously, people are bullish on ETFs. They're bullish on ETFs occurring. They know that ETFs are very likely to occur. We've seen advertisements drop from major hedge funds, kind of front-running those ETFs. We're pretty much 95% chance of those ETFs being approved. It would be an absolute shock if they're declined. And so at this point, obviously, we've priced in the ETFs. We're pricing in the ETFs. The reason why Bitcoin's moved upwards so high in such relatively short period of time, from 24k to 46k in just over 3.5 months, which actually is quite a short period of time. That's almost a 2x, is because of that ETF narrative. Now, we know that the TA hasn't been particularly reliable at this period of the market cycle. In this period of the time recently, in the last year or so, basically, but specifically the last 3.5 months, ever since the start of this upwards trend. How do we know it hasn't been reliable? Well, we've seen patterns of exhaustion emerge over and over again, and they just haven't come into fruition. They just haven't occurred. They haven't played out. For example, descending highs on the volume. For example, consistent bearish divergence in the RSI. We've had things like ascending wedge formations. We've had things like, consolidation at resistance. We had a thing here recently where we had kind of a lower high, which could have been the start of a downwards trend. It could have been a double top formation. We broke it to the upside. Just consistently ignoring the inclinations of a TA and just consistently moving to the upside over and over again because of this ETF narrative. I don't see that as particularly healthy in the traditional sense, because I want Bitcoin to act cyclically and rationally, but technically speaking, it's very bullish, okay, because we're moving upwards. So we've broken our higher high. We've made a new high, or we're in the process of making a new high. By the way, this isn't completely unexpected. I have been saying over and over again for literally months, right? And you can go back in my previous videos, basically every second video I've been speaking about it for the last 2 months, about how Bitcoin, ever since we broke 38.5k, I've been saying there's a very solid chance that we could just move straight up to 48k. And the reason I've said that over and over again is because even though I didn't want it to happen, because I want Bitcoin to behave cyclically and correct when it needs to correct and fall over TA. I did accept that it was a very likely probability. Not likely is the wrong word, but it's a very much a probability. The reason I've come to this conclusion over the past few months is because I understand what macro levels are. I understand where the macro levels are. I understand we had a macro level as identified by the volume profile, which is a bit more muffled up now, but you can see our previous macro level was 38.5k, and above 38.5k there was literally nothing. It's changed a bit now, as you can see, because we consolidated that price region. But above 38.5k, there was no real major resistance until 47.5k to 48k. And so I always said upon the break of 38.5k, there is a certainly a chance that Bitcoin could just move upwards to 48. Now, as of right now, given the fact, and we're going to get into the monthly candle close in a second, because I understand that's what a lot of people want to look into. That's actually one of the reasons Bitcoin is moving upwards so high over the last few days, in my opinion. But it's very reasonable to assume that Bitcoin could just continue upwards until 47.5k or 48k. I don't think it's backed by the TA, but I don't think much of this move has been backed by the TA. And this is what I keep saying to you. Unfortunately, the ETF narratives have plagued the Bitcoin charts to a certain extent. They've plagued the TA. They've kind of put the TA into a constant bullish tilt. And regardless of the exhaustion that's been showing on the screen, it just doesn't really play out. And so this is why I'm quite excited. Even though I love to see Bitcoin go upwards, and I really do, I'm quite excited for the ETF narrative to be over, for ETFs to be released and approved, so we can see a return to rationality in the price action. Because whenever there is a underlying narrative that, constantly influences Bitcoin's price action, constantly influences how many sellers there are, for example. Not many people are willing to sell just 2 weeks out from an ETF decision, for example. If you see a correction on Bitcoin like we did over here, and you're holding your Bitcoin, you're not going to sell into that correction because the ETF's just in 10 days from now. Why would you do that, right? That's the whole point. And considering basically everyone who has bought Bitcoin in the last 3.5 months is very much aware of ETFs, everyone has this same mindset right now. And that's why Bitcoin just is immune to corrections at the moment. Now, I think that ETF's decision is in 8 days from now, so that will be coming to an end quite shortly. And I've made myself very clear, and I'll continue to make myself very clear. No matter how good a narrative is, I will never buy based on a narrative. I will always buy based on charts. And this is why we've got an average price of Bitcoin down in the 20Ks. It's why we first bought Bitcoin at 17K after a 15K bottom. And it's why I didn't decide to buy Bitcoin ever since we broke above 32K. Our most recent buy was 32K. I don't believe right now in buying in this current price region. First of all, I don't need to because my average price is so low. But second of all, I don't buy based off of narratives. I buy based off TA. And right now, the TA is exhausted. But the price is moving up because of narrative. So I believe that the best thing we can do right now, or at least what I'm doing right now, is I'm waiting for that ETF decision before I sell or buy Bitcoin. But I very much understand there is a possibility Bitcoin could just continue upwards to 48K here. And that's a very real possibility. But I want to look more into short term tomorrow, okay? Because we've got plenty of time to discuss short term. And as I've said, and as I made very clear, I don't think it's necessarily very relevant what the indicators are showing us right now. I think that's been proven very clearly. And if you're denying that, you clearly don't know much about TA, I think, at this point. Because the patterns of exhaustion have just been so ridiculously clear that it's unbearable to even spend time explaining it. But look, what I will say is this. I think the reason why Bitcoin has seen in the last 48 hours, specifically since the new year, a huge pump to the upside, specifically in this time period, is because we saw a major thing occur on the monthly candle. Now, if you look on the screen, you will see the baseline of the Ichimoku cloud on the monthly candle in red. This has been a very important line for Bitcoin throughout its entire price history. I mean that quite literally. You can look all the way back to 2012, for example. Just a couple of years after Bitcoin was actually released. And you can see that ever since 2012, ever since it first popped up on the screen here, it's been acting as resistance. And whenever we've gotten above this line, we've formed major bull markets. Whenever we've gotten below this line, we've formed major bear markets. They've been very little inconsistencies, basically no fake outs. The only real fake out, I suppose, was over here in 2014, almost 10 years ago. In fact, 10 years ago now, as it is 2024. And it wasn't really even a fake out because we dropped below that line and we went downwards 40%. So I can't really call a 45% drop a fake out. That's a pretty valid move. But overall, we were actually looking at this line as very, very important on this recent monthly candle close. And the reason being is because, as you can see, Bitcoin was facing this line as a very strong resistance in the monthly candle. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I do not think that we actually closed very convincingly at all above this line. In fact, as you can see on the screen right now, you're pretty much closed underneath the line, right? We closed the monthly candle basically on top of it, but the line itself moved downwards. So now the open is very much above the line. So there's been a slight nuance in our breakout of that line, but it is technically a breakout. That was, I suppose, technically predictable that it was going to move downwards, but it would have taken an extra degree of analysis. I didn't expect it to move downwards like that. I probably should have foreseen that occurring. That's probably my bad there. But regardless of the situation, we didn't actually really close the candle convincingly. That was as expected. The problem is the line's moved downwards now. The line's moved downwards to 37.5k. So it's kind of, we were kind of right and wrong at the same time. Technically, we didn't really close above it, but the line moved down. So now we've broken out above it. But what I will say is this: I never really predicted that we would reject from it. I did want to see a rejection from it. Right? I really did, because if you look at the Bitcoin chart here on the screen, you can see the Bitcoin at this part of a cycle. This screenshot was taken about a month ago. We've deviated a little bit too high from where we're meant to be. Right? I say meant. I say the word meant, and I don't mean it literally. Okay, Bitcoin's not meant to do anything, but as per being on par with previous cycles, we're a little bit too high right now. We probably want to see a correction and consolidation, come back down to a baseline, correct for around 3 months or something like that, then go upwards again to reach all-time highs at the end of 2024. That's what we want to be seeing. And the perfect time to reject would have been at this Ichimoku Cloud baseline, because that's exactly where we rejected in 2019 when we deviated a little bit too high at the same point of the cycle. That would have been perfect to see. But unfortunately, that Ichimoku Cloud baseline just decided to move down by itself. So that was interesting to say the least, but I suppose we're broken above it now. We're very much above it now. And unless we close the monthly candle below 37k, which I see is pretty unlikely, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously the ETF decision could jumble things up a bit, but it's very difficult to come to any reasonable conclusion that we would be below that level at the end of the month. It's just difficult to say something like that. Again, obviously it's possible because they're ETFs, and obviously the ETFs have driven the price action massively to the upside. And so, for example, if it's a sell the news event and we do see a start of a correction, we could very well go downwards. But I think it would be quite weird to go even further below that line, especially considering that line is just going to keep moving downwards. So I doubt we're going to get back down below that Ichimoku Cloud baseline for the rest of the cycle. I think we will stay above that line now. And so it's excellent to see this open above it for the bulls. It really is good to see, and that would be a great explanation for why the price has moved upwards so suddenly and so rapidly here, just above new highs that we set on the 9th of December. It's a very good explanation for that recent move. We have cleared a very major resistance now, right? This is something that held us up for support in 2021 throughout the entirety of the bull market, including in July after a major correction. It held for support just before the breakdown of the actual bear market in 2022. It acted as resistance in 2019, also in 2020, and we finally got above it. And when we got above it, we marked the start of the bull market. This is a line that's very, very massive for Bitcoin. And, people have looked at it, they've seen we've gotten above it, and they've bought because of that. That makes complete rational sense. That's the justification, in my opinion, for this short-term move to the upside. And it's very good to see Bitcoin clearing this resistance. But it doesn't change the fact, even though we've done this excellent thing, even though I don't think we'll get down below this line again, I think we've cleared that for good now for this cycle. It doesn't change the fact that Bitcoin is exhausted, okay? Bitcoin is exhausted. We do have the ETF decision coming up. We have to remain rational. We have to trust TA even when it's not acting as best as it could be. We have to understand that narratives, fundamental narratives like the ETF decision coming up, are very, very difficult to predict. Obviously, in terms of predicting whether it's going to be approved or not, it's quite simple. Obviously, it's more likely to be approved based on what we've seen. But the actual result is hard to predict. Is it going to be sell the news event? Look, there's a complete possibility it could be, because we've seen such strong buying in the months leading up to it. There could simply be no more buyers left by the time it releases. It could very well be a sell the news event. We could very well reject downwards from 48k and see a correction from there. But I do think that Bitcoin will be seeing a correction pre-halving. I stand by that. And I've never been precise about when it would be. I've never seen it as predictable about when it will stem from or where it will stem from. Because so technically speaking, I haven't been wrong in any regard, because I haven't made any predictions in any regard, because I've understood that it's very difficult to make predictions based on TA when you have a fundamental narrative polluting the price action. What I will say is this: I understand that's not really satisfying to you as a viewer. You want content, you want information, you want predictions. What I'll say is this: as I've said for months, it's very possible Bitcoin could reach 48k. It is very possible we could reach 48k without correction. I do think that we will be seeing a correction from 48k. I think that's a likely scenario based on TA, but the fundamental narrative will pollute Bitcoin. As I've said over and over again, I don't believe right now that buying or selling, doing anything really, on a long-term basis is logical before this ETF decision. I believe we need to be waiting for it. I'm going to sound like a broken record for the next week or so until this ETF is released. I've sounded like a broken record for the last couple of weeks or so, just saying the same thing over and over again. I don't believe action before the ETF is logical because I don't believe the price is determined by TA right now. And so how can you really be sure about what you're doing? You're essentially just throwing your money into a gambling machine. But overall, we've made some great progress on Bitcoin. Yes, we have unfortunately, moved upwards a little bit too soon here. We are continuing to move upwards a bit too soon. I wouldn't say it's necessarily damaging the 4-year cycle structure. It's just preventing new trends from being made. The existing trends we have are not being damaged by this. I want to make that very clear. Again, it's just preventing new trends from being formed, which does, hurt a little bit. It does diminish the amount of cyclical predictability we could have in the next cycle, but the existing trends aren't being damaged at the moment. I don't think there is much difference in correcting from 44k as there is from 48k. It's not a big deal in my opinion, as long as we do see a correction at some point and we do see consolidation at some point, preferably before the halving, preferably before we reach all-time highs. We are going to be on track cyclically for Bitcoin. And that's all that matters. So guys, excellent moves on Bitcoin. We've broken that Ichimoku Cloud baseline. It's one less thing to worry about. Bitcoin dominance is moving back to the upside. Great to see, as it is meant to be doing that at this point in the cycle. As we can see as well, we've broken our recent higher high. That's excellent. We are moving between macro support and resistance in a pretty logical fashion. Even though that short-term TA has been diluted, the longer-term TA is just acting quite perfectly. Again, this is what you're meant to do. When you break above major resistance, you're meant to move upwards to the next major resistance, and then you're meant to reject from that region, bounce around a bit, and then ideally move upwards again. That is logical TA. So TA on a longer term scale is working. The macro scale, it's certainly doing well cyclically. It's just the short term and medium term that are being slightly polluted right now. But I've made myself very clear in this video. Great progress on Bitcoin. We'll have to monitor it and track it over the next few days. Guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Go ahead and check out the VIP group on Telegram. We trade altcoins sub-daily there with entry signals, take profits, targets. We've got stop-loss information, everything you need to trade altcoins, as well as access to a 24/7 community group chat where you can ask any questions about cryptocurrency to our members in there, or you can just chat about the markets, share charts, share what you're looking at, share news events, everything you need there in a community group chat. Good little community to join there. So go ahead and check out the VIP group. And then also looking at the Bingx and Bitget exchange. If you need an exchange to buy and sell cryptocurrency on, which you would need, as anyone does need, Bitget is global Bingx is global non-KYC, and Bitget is global KYC minus the USA. So take your pick regarding your geographical location or KYC requirements. Again, Bingx global non-KYC, Bitget global minus USA. Both very low in trading fees. Both have never been hacked before. My referral links are down below with a 30% trading fee discount for life. 15% on each exchange. And then also the Crypto Academy Become a Trader course. This will teach you everything you need to know how to trade. All the information is on the website. You can throw us an email as per the email address on the website, cryptoacademycourses@gmail.com. We'll get back to you with any payment information requests you might have, and also answering any questions you might have. Guys, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.